And this time, we are diving into the results of a specific, incredibly varied grouping. Round 2, Group 7, these 4 contenders have already proven themselves once, knocking out other heavy hitters back in Round 1. Now, they face an even higher bar.
Precisely. And the 4 albums facing off in this specific group, it's a fascinating collision of genres and production styles.
Oh, what have we got?
We have the early 2000s rap behemoth, the Massacre from 50 Cent.
Okay, huge album.
The evolutionary pop rock statement, Traveling from Roxette.
Interesting.
The heavy southern rock masterpiece, Marauder from Blackfoot.
Classic rock vibe there.
And the compilation, Once More, with Feeling from Placebo.
Right, the greatest hits. So what's really at stake in this particular Round 2 group? It's not just a trip to Round 3, is it?
No. It's a massive lesson in album construction, I think.
Yeah.
You've got a classic rock album that's incredibly tight, a hip-hop sequel kind of plagued by its length, and a greatest hits collection suffering from, maybe too much sonic consistency, oddly enough.
Wow.
And a late-career pop album that prioritized maturity. 2 of them will proceed, having shown the highest level of, let's call it, album integrity.
And 2 will be deemed structurally flawed for this high-stakes competition.
Got it.
Okay, so before we dissect the final rankings of this group, we really have to appreciate the high stakes these albums have already overcome, right?
Absolutely.
These aren't wild cards. They're all qualifiers. They've already won or placed second in their initial Round 1 groups. And those groups were, frankly, filled with albums many listeners might consider, untouchable classics.
That context is vital, especially when you consider the core idea of this album quest. Judgment relies purely on the merits of the specific recording, not its reputation.
Right. No coasting.
Exactly. Just making it to Round 2 proves a certain foundational quality.
Okay.
So the albums in Round 2, regardless of their style, all managed to hold the listener's attention and maintain a high standard for their entire duration in their initial outing. At least enough to get through.
It really sets the bar impossibly high for Group 7 then.
Yeah.
You can't just coast on reputation here. You have to prove under this competitive pressure that every single track belongs.
Exactly. No room for error.
All right, so when we look at the results of Round 2, Group 7, the ultimate winner is Traveling by Roxette, taking the coveted first place spot.
Yep, number 1.
Considering they defeated Iron Maiden just to get here, and now have beaten a massive hip-hop album, a greatest hits compilation, and a tight southern rock record. You have to walk me through the psychology here. This feels like the biggest upset of the entire group.
It really does, doesn't it? And this victory is maybe the single best illustration of the power of the album quest methodology, the importance of reevaluation and repeat listening.
Oh.
The author specifically admits to initially underestimating this album back in Round 1. He says he was too focused on Roxette's shift to a milder pace compared to their upbeat pop rock past,
Sure, the big hits.
But giving it that second dedicated listen under the competitive pressure of Round 2 proved its undeniable class. It forced a deeper appreciation.
It's an interesting sonic pivot they made, though. The source material highlights this massive shift in their typical composition. Roxette used to be defined by like a 25% ballad to 75% sharp pop rock ratio, right? That classic 80s and 90s dynamic.
That's the sound everyone knows.
Now they've flipped the script entirely, moved to 75% ballad and only 25% pop rock.
And this is where your challenge comes in, right? Isn't that just a polite way of saying the new album is kind of boring, adult contemporary?
Well, yeah, that's the risk.
The answer, according to this deep dive, is emphatically no. That maturity, that willingness to slow down and focus the energy is actually what secured its victory, because it didn't sacrifice songwriting quality.
Okay.
The consistency of the album's sound, described as a charming set of musical constructions, shines through precisely because they are stripped down. They feel focused, clean, and meticulously produced.
So the quality isn't just in the ballads themselves, but maybe the enduring energy in the execution, even in the slower stuff.
Absolutely. And they prove they still have that energy. The album cleverly incorporates live versions of tracks like Stars and She's Got Nothing On But the Radio.
Ah, okay. So you still get that hit of the old Roxette.
Exactly. It confirms they still possess that classic Roxette pop rock energy. But the core of the album, the real strength in this context, is in its quieter, more acoustic moments. The charm comes from the stripped-down nature of the instrumentation, which gives the compositions space to breathe. The author points specifically to genuinely beautiful, refined ballads like Turn of the Tide and Angel Passing. They stand up on their own merit.
And we can't forget the catchier tracks, like the verse of the track with that incredibly long title. Excuse me, do you want me to check on your wife?
Right. Still catchy, still well-constructed. It's that combination of familiar energy and mature, deliberate composition that's the winning formula here.
So they might be traveling to middle age, as the author puts it.
Yeah, but they're doing so with this polished class and consistency that completely avoids filler. It's the tight, deliberate arrangement of the entire record, despite the overall shift in tempo that pushed it over the finish line. It demonstrated zero self-inflicted wounds, Nothing that cost them points in a back-to-back ranking.
Okay, that makes sense. Consistency wins. Now, moving to the runner-up, securing the second spot and the final round 3 qualification, we have Marauders by Blackfoot. This is a complete gear shift from Roxette, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Total 180. This is raw power, but crucially, it's disciplined raw power. Blackfoot is characterized as, heavy rocking, southern growling rock, full of heavy riffs, incredibly fine guitar playing, all led by Ricky Medlock. It's immediate, it's loud, and this is key for the quest. It is excellently constructed from start to finish. It's a masterclass in American heavy rock structure.
But what's fascinating here, and what seems to give the album its depth, lifting it above just standard hard rock, is the lyrical contrast.
Right.
The music is all this sort of exuberance of youth, but the subject matter frequently delves into depressing social depravity.
It creates this really fascinating tension. When you dive into the track descriptions provided, you realize just how dark the lyrical landscape actually is.
Like what?
Well, the seeming chirpy opener, Good Morning, is essentially describing substance abuse and addiction.
Okay, wow.
And they don't shy away from really serious, difficult themes elsewhere. Fire of the Dragon, Paying for It, and that expansive, nearly 8-minute-long track Diary of a Working Man. They all contain direct references to things like prostitution, heroin use, and even suicide.
That, on paper, sounds like it should just drag the emotional weight of the album right down. Why does Marauder manage to avoid being overwhelmingly negative or dispiriting? How did it remain enjoyable enough to qualify?
Because the album's strength lies in the musical mastery that contains the darkness. The author stresses that if you just ignore the serious rhapsodic messages for a moment, you are left with well-crafted songs and excellent musicianship. The band demonstrated incredible tightness and focus. You can really tell they put in extensive pre-recording work, refining every riff, every transition before committing it to tape. That professional polish prevents the heavy lyrical content from just sinking the whole mood.
Okay, let's get into the specifics of that craftsmanship, especially around the closing tracks. The author highlights the structure of Diary of a Working Man, describing it as a sort of stairway to heaven-inspired rock song. What exactly does that analogy mean musically here?
It means it successfully builds complexity and emotional range, evolving its sound pretty dramatically over its runtime. It starts quietly, often using a 12-string acoustic guitar to set this gentle, melodic scene, a bit like the opening of Scareaway, right?
Yeah, I can picture that.
Then it gradually escalates the instrumentation, the tempo, the intensity, culminating in the full-on heavy walk section. But the key is that it maintains its structural integrity and emotional through line throughout that build. And then it winds back down, concluding once again with the 12-string guitar, creating this perfect, cohesive circle. It feels complete.
That kind of meticulous structural planning is exactly what qualifies an album in this quest, isn't it?
Totally. And then you follow that with the melodic anthem Search and closing the album, featuring those two ebullient guitar solos. It ends on a high. So that combination of depth, powerful rock, that surprising thematic contrast, and exceptional, tight musical craftsmanship allowed Marauder to overcome the sonic limitations of Placebo and the structural flaws of 50 Cent, securing a clear second place. It's just a really unified, purposeful, artistic statement.
Okay, now we turn to the albums that fell short, starting with Placebo's Once More with Feeling, which took the third spot.
Didn't quite make it.
Now, this is a 1996-2004 singles collection, plus 3 new songs. Greatest hits albums are usually considered the safest bets in these kinds of quests, aren't they? Because they are supposedly all quality tracks, no filler.
You'd think so, yeah.
So what was the critical flaw that pushed them out of the running here?
The problem, perhaps counterintuitively, was a complete lack of dynamic range across the collection. That can be an unexpected pitfall for a greatest hits album.
How so?
The primary detractor, and the defining critique of the entire album, according to the source, was the pervasive sonic footprint, what the author describes as an almost off-putting constant guitar walled in and a grungy overtone.
Okay, let's delve into that technical term, the guitar wall din.
Mm.
For you listening, what does that actually sound like, and why did it become a competitive penalty?
It's essentially a production choice, right? It favors volume and this kind of consistent mid-range aggression over clarity and space. Imagine every guitar track being heavily compressed, highly distorted, and then just layered on top of each other.
Right, dense.
Very dense. And while individually, tracks like Nancy Boy or The Bitter End sound fantastic on their own,
Yeah, great songs.
when played back-to-back across a whole album, the listener just experiences this constant grinding sonic pressure. There's no relief. This lack of sonic variety, that pervasive, narrow palette, means that after, say, 40 minutes, the album fatigues the listener.
Okay.
It makes the ranking experience much less enjoyable than the refined balance of Roxette or the disciplined tightness of Blackfoot, which both had more light and shade.
So, in this competitive listening environment, the consistent production style they used across nearly a decade actually ended up penalizing the collection, even if the individual songs were brilliant.
Exactly. The quest demands artistic flow, a journey. Placebo's album provided a wall, not really a flow. You really have to kind of peel back that sonic layer, push past the din to find the true quality underneath. Because beneath that pervasive grunge, there are sparks of fabulous sonic invention. The author did find these ad hoc experimental sounds and sophisticated engineering details hidden away on tracks like Nancy Boy, Protégé Moi, and Teenage Angst.
And their influences are clearly audible too, right? The source material notes they proudly wear their glam-like influences, morphing easily between like the melancholic depths of The Cure,
Yeah.
the electronic coolness of Depeche Mode, and eventually even into the theatricality of Bowie territory.
And that theatricality is literal, too. We have to mention the collaborative depth. David Bowie himself actually appears on the track. Without you, I'm nothing.
Wow, okay. That lends serious credibility.
Absolutely. And technically, the record is inventive in places. We see it in the unique guitar work, like the almost anti-solo found on English Summer Rain.
An anti-solo, what's that?
Well, instead of a soaring melodic line, the guitar generates this interesting textural noise that supports the atmosphere rather than dominating it. It's quite cool, actually.
And when the album hits, it hits hard. The Bitter End, Black Eyed, and 20 Years are all praised for their high quality. So if the quality of the individual hits is undeniable, why did it lose to an album that was 75% balance?
Because in the album quest, consistency over the whole runtime is paramount, and dynamic consistency having variety is part of that. As a compilation, the pervasive, narrow, grungy sound just meant that the overall listening experience fell short of the ideal.
Okay.
It offered excellent songs, sure, but maybe a poor listening experience when compared to the structural perfection demonstrated by the top two contenders who offered those necessary peaks and troughs, you know.
Got it. Okay, let's move to the fourth place finisher then, The Massacre by 50 Cent.
Dead last in this group.
This album seemingly had every advantage. It was a massive commercial success. It was the follow-up to his definitive debut, Get Rich or Die Trying.
Huge debut.
And it had production help from legends like Dr. Dre and Eminem or Slim. It started with so much credibility, yet ended up last. What happened?
This is the definitive case study in structural sabotage in the album quest, I think. For the first several tracks, the album is pretty much a masterpiece of its genre.
Really?
Yeah, you have those heroic hip-hop bass lines, the blazing synth motifs, and 50 Cent rapping about, life and dayhood, his street cred. This initial run is summarized as just spitting out quality all the way up to the excellent and rather arousing Candy Shop.
Yeah, Candy Shop was massive, but the momentum just failed them. Where exactly did the material begin to dip and eventually fall apart competitively?
The author pinpoints one immediate exception early on, which was Gatman and Robin. Apparently, that one failed to impress, despite the talent involved.
Okay.
But the catastrophic structural failure, the real momentum killer, occurs immediately following that strong opening run. The album slows down and shifts dramatically into what the author terms the relationship eat tracks.
Ah, okay. You're talking about tracks like Get in My Car, Bitch, A Baltimore Love Thing, Build You Up, and God Gave Me Style. Tracks that kind of deviate from the established aggressive persona.
Exactly. And this is where listener fatigue sets in, especially in this format. The author clearly prefers the This Is 50 or Piggy Bank style, that meaner, more aggressive gangsta persona that defined his initial appeal and the album's initial momentum.
Right.
When you transition from the high-energy club bangers and street narratives to these slower, sometimes kind of forced narrative tracks, the momentum doesn't just stall, it collapses. In a back-to-back competitive listening scenario like this, Any lapse in momentum is just fatal.
The cruel irony, though, is that the quality does pick back up later in the album, doesn't it? It wasn't all bad after the opening.
It does. That's the tragedy of it, structurally speaking. The album conjures up more high-quality material later in the track list, specifically citing Disco Inferno, Guns Come Out, and My Toy Soldier.
2 tracks.
Yeah. But they are too little, too late, and crucially, too buried behind that structural sag in the middle. These tracks, which maybe should have been used to reinforce the momentum of the first half, were used instead almost like filler towards the end of a very long album.
So the structural flaw wasn't necessarily a massive number of bad songs, but the sequencing and the sheer length, the fact that the album goes on and on past its natural breaking point.
Absolutely. That's the main takeaway for 50 Cent here. Conciseness and strategic placement. The author even offered this hypothetical revision that perfectly illustrates the flaw.
What was that?
He suggested that if those 3 high-quality tracks from the second half, Disco Inferno, Guns Come Out, My Toy Soldier, had been strategically moved up, perhaps placed immediately after the peak of Candy Shop, the album could have been tightened into a pretty tight hip-hop record. Probably much shorter, much punchier.
That would have dramatically shifted the emotional momentum of the entire listening experience, wouldn't it?
It really would have. Instead of experiencing that massive, dispiriting sag in the middle, the listener would have experienced sustained quality. By burying those key tracks and letting the album sprawl, 50 Cent essentially ensured that the Massacre was, ironically, massacred in this high-pressure group. It was due to its lack of conciseness and its inability to maintain momentum throughout. He committed a serious self-inflicted wound by including too much average material and placing his quality material in all the wrong spots for this kind of listening test.
Okay, let's quickly review the final scorecard for this brutal round 2 group before we synthesize the overall lesson. What did the final ranking look like?
All right, so in 4th place, we had The Massacre by 50 Cent, penalized ruthlessly for its structural length and that devastating mid-album sag.
Right.
3rd place went to Once More with Feeling by Placebo, a compilation hampered not really by its songs, but by its own narrow, pervasive sonic palette that led to listener fatigue. Securing passage to round 3, we had Marauder by Blackfoot in 2nd place. Celebrated for its disciplined, tight musicianship and well-crafted songs that managed to contain that dark lyrical complexity really well.
And the undisputed winner, traveling metaphorically to the top spot, was Traveling by Roxette, whose maturity, refined balance, and consistent set of charming, acoustically focused constructions proved superior to the high-intensity challengers.
This result is profoundly insightful, I think, for the entire album quest concept. What does this tell us about the criteria for success when you're judging vastly different genres head-to-head like this?
Yeah, here's where it gets really interesting, isn't it? Roxette, an evolutionary pop album leaning heavily on ballads, beat a heavy southern rock album and 2 highly successful high-intensity collections known for having nothing but hits.
The implication is crystal clear. The album quest methodology favors refinement and artistic evolution that demonstrates consistent quality throughout the entire runtime. Roxette was rewarded for being focused and polished, basically, for achieving zero filler and maintaining a specific artistic vision, even if it was a quieter one. Blackfoot was rewarded for being tight and impeccably crafted.
Right.
In stark contrast, any collection burdened by a narrow sonic theme, like Placebo, or inconsistent quality coupled with excessive length, like 50 Cent, faces an enormous competitive hurdle in this format.
It really seems like perfection of execution trumps initial star power or raw, aggressive impact almost every single time in this quest. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
That's the exact lesson. When we talk about perfection of execution in this context, we mean zero filler and flawless sequencing. If 50 Cent had cut the runtime by, say, 25% and aggressively resequenced those tracks, he might have won this group, or at least placed much higher. Because in this methodology, every second of lag or sag is a competitive, self-inflicted wound. The best album isn't the one with the biggest hits necessarily, but the one that holds together as a perfectly cohesive, enjoyable, and impeccably constructed statement from start to finish.